With it being the international break, I've decided to do a new and updated Premier League 1 to 20 because I did one at the start of the season, and that was before a lot of transfers had been completed, certainly from a Sunderland perspective. We know we didn't have any new centre-backs when I did it, so Alderete had not arrived when I last did my 1 to 20, and I'll whack it up on the screen now. So this is my original 1 to 20. I've got Burnley, Sunderland and Brentford getting relegated. I did think West Ham would have a struggle. Pretty confident on Leeds at this point. Crystal Palace, that's a bit of a one that I've obviously got wrong because Palace are in there in 13th. I don't think they'll finish there. Bournemouth, maybe another one I've got wrong. Had them in 11th. I think they'll do better than that. Nottingham Forest, maybe they're a little bit too high. Newcastle in the top 7. I have Brighton in 5th place. I've got the top 4. Probably still pretty happy with that top 4. But yeah, I'm going to do a new and updated 1 to 20 anyway. And a one that is now more informed. Because when you do one at the start of August, there's a lot of stuff that still needs doing. So therefore, you end up looking stupid because teams sign players and teams sell players. So with the knowledge of 7 games behind us in the start of the Premier League season, I now think there is definitely a much more informed 1 to 20. So I'm going to do that now. We're going to start from the top and work our way down. So in first place, I have maintained that Arsenal will win the Premier League. I think Liverpool have had a slow start. I sort of thought that Liverpool might struggle to integrate their new players, and that seems to be the case. So I have Arsenal winning the league. I have Liverpool below them, which is what I had before. I had Man City in 3rd and Chelsea in 4th. So that top 4, I'm pretty confident it'll be the top 4 this season. I think there's a big gulf between those 4 and the rest of the league, which is interesting because obviously previously that hasn't been the case. We've seen teams break into that top 4, but that's the top 4 from last season. I think that top 4 will stay roughly the same. And I think that when you look at Arsenal, their defence, I trust them to win the Premier League. I really do this season. I think Liverpool will become good, but probably not this season. They might do really well in the Champions League, maybe. City and Chelsea, I just think are maybe a notch below, but they're still very, very good teams. And that win for Chelsea at the weekend, could have ramifications, certainly for Arsenal to win the league table. We then got a little bit of change. So I had Brighton in 5th place. Well, I've now put Spurs in 5th place. And look, I don't like to be all big six to be in those positions, but I just think Spurs look good. That was an impressive win against Leeds at the weekend. And I think that they'll do enough this season to just chip away and pick up enough points and be better than the other teams that are chasing that, because I've been pretty unimpressed with some of the teams you normally see up there, and obviously we'll go through that as we go through this league table. But yeah, I think Spurs are probably the 5th best team in the Premier League. In 6th place, I have moved Crystal Palace up there, and I did hum and haw a little bit with Palace and Spurs. I think Palace have looked really good this season, obviously lost at the weekend against Everton, last minute goal. But I do think Crystal Palace are going to have a really, really strong season. I do worry a little bit about their squad depth, particularly playing in Europe. And when they played against Sunderland, they didn't have Wharton, they didn't have Saw. They did look a little bit, it did look a lot weaker, if we're being totally honest. But yeah, I have Palace finishing in 6th. In 7th, I have put Bournemouth. And I just really like this Bournemouth team. I think they're really, really exciting going forward. I think Semenyo is just what a player he is. I can't believe we had him at Sunderland all them years ago. Yeah, Semenyo, what a player he is. And I think Bournemouth just look like a good team. They've got a good manager. Iriola's just such a good coach. And I don't see them, not challenging for these positions in Europe. And I don't know if Bournemouth have been in Europe before, but I'm pretty sure they haven't. So yeah, that's me tipping Bournemouth to get into Europe. In 8th place, I have Newcastle, and, I don't like to praise Newcastle and give them a lot of credit, but I think they probably are within that conversation for the European places this season. I think that Volta Mardeo's come in, he's looked pretty decent for them so far. I don't think they look as good as what they did last season. I think they will struggle having Champions League football there. I think they'll struggle playing the midweek and then the Saturday, but they did come through that at the weekend. They did play midweek and then win against Nottingham Forest at the weekend. So they've shown they could do that, but Nottingham Forest also had Europe, so there is that. But yeah, I think Newcastle will finish 8th. I don't think they'll be challenging for the Champions League places this year. I don't think they've got the depth to do that, but I think they'll be in and around it, and I wouldn't be shocked if they finished in the top 6. In 9th place, I have Aston Villa, and yes, I think they've won 5 in a row now. So they have come on since that draw with Sunderland. I just don't think they look as good as a team as they were last season, and I think that with the improvement of Crystal Palace, Spurs and Bournemouth, I think it's going to be really hard for Newcastle and Aston Villa to sort of replicate what they've done in recent seasons. So I have Villa down in ninth. I wouldn't be shocked if they, did a little bit better, but I've just been pretty unimpressed with them so far this season, even though they have won, their last couple of Premier League games. I'm just not sold on Aston Villa right now being a real threat to the top end of the table. In 10th place, I've put Everton, so that's a big jump. I had them in 16th place when I first did this league table, but I have them in 10th now. I really like what they've got going forward. I think Jack Grealish looks really good. I really like Iliman and Dye. I really like Beto. I think defensively they look pretty strong. Again, I hate to give credit to David Moyes. Sends shivers down the spine, but look, it just is good for these sorts of clubs in these sort of situations. And Everton, they'll have a decent season, in my opinion. I don't think I've got really worries about them being dragged in any sort of relegation fight. It was a good win for them against Crystal Palace at the weekend. So Everton in 10th, Brighton in 11th, and I initially had Brighton in 5th. But I've not been impressed with Brighton so far this season. Yes, they've picked up 2 wins against Man City and Chelsea, but they just drop stupid points all the time. So I can't really sit here and have them finishing in the top 6 when I can't trust them to beat Wolves, which is what they didn't do yesterday. So in my opinion, Brighton are probably going to be in for a mid-table season. I don't know if that changes things with their manager, because he's been there now obviously a full season, and I thought coming into this season he would have sort of got them ticking more. Last season they just dropped a lot of stupid points at home, and I feel like this season it looks like it's going to be more the same, dropping stupid points all the time. In 12th, I've got Fulham, which isn't a move. And what can you really say about Fulham? Just really bland, aren't they? Just sat in that mid-table, picking up points. Good at home, not so good away. Got a good manager. There just isn't a lot to say about Fulham. They are like the typical bland mid-table Premier League team based in London that, as a Sunderland fan, I have no real opinion on or care for, and do not know a Fulham fan. So I got Fulham in 12th anyway. I don't think that bad. Man United, I've got them 13th. And I initially had Manchester United in 9th, so this is a little bit of a drop. I think the thing about Man United is that I think at some point they are going to change the manager. I thought they were good at the weekend against Sunderland, and I thought it showed signs that the players are behind him. And when the system does work, they are a bit of a problem to play against. But I'm not convinced Manchester United are anything more than a bottom half team in the Premier League. I don't love the manager and his marriage to this particular formation. I think there's problems at Manchester United. I wouldn't be shocked if Manchester United the next couple of years were to be in serious relegation trouble, because they are just on like a downward trend right now. Not convinced by Man United long term, but this season I think they'll be all right. I've seen enough to suggest that they'll certainly pick up enough points at home. I think they've only lost once this season at home against Arsenal, and they'll play pretty well that day. 14th place, I have Brentford. So I initially had Brentford in 18th. So I think Brentford are going to stay up now, which is something I didn't really expect. I thought Brentford would be worse than what they are. I think they've been poor away from home, but I think at home they're going to pick up points. They're going to be difficult to play against, and 14th might be a little bit too high, but I'm looking at basically the teams under Brentford in this league table as being the relegation contenders, the teams that I think will be scrapping for it this season. And I think Brentford might be the best of them. I really like Thiago they've got up front. But I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Brentford fell into a relegation scrap. But I think right now, the way I look at them and what I've seen, I have them doing a little bit better than what I thought at the start of the season when I had them in 18th. In 15th, I have Sunderland. And initially, I had them in 19th place to start. And this was because they hadn't signed defenders. And this was my main concern, that they'd line up with Jensen Seelt, which they did do, which I actually think cost them points against Burnley, because he came on and I think he could have done better for the Josh Cullen goal. But anyway, not a digging on Jensen Seelt. I think he's a good prospect. I think Sunderland, though, have shown me enough to suggest that they can stay clear of relegation this season. 11 points from 7 games. No team's ever been relegated from that position before. I think that they look strong at home, which is important, but they look like they're going to be tricky on the road. And look, to stay up in the Premier League, you basically have to find 10 or 11 wins and then draw like 9 games, roughly. Sunderland, I think, can pick up 7 or 8 home wins this season. They've already got 2, and I think they can pick up 2 or 3 on the road. They've already got 1. I think over the season that will happen for them. I'm not seeing enough to suggest that how they're playing is... It's not like they've had a hot start to the season. I mean, yes, you could look at the fixtures and say they've had, better fixtures. But I think Sunderland have had Sunderland have showed enough to me to say that this team will continue to pick up points and be a nuisance for most teams in the Premier League this season. And that is all you can really ask for from a newly promoted team. I think Sunderland are going to be a problem for a lot of teams in the Premier League with how they play. And, even so at the weekend, yes, they lost against Man United, but when they changed the setup, which the manager is good at, reading games as they go on, they looked far better. So Sunderland, for me, I have them in 15th place. I think Sunderland will be okay, certainly from what I've seen. And I watch a lot of football around the world, and you can normally tell what a relegation team looks like. And I don't think this Sunderland team looks like a team that is going to be in massive danger this season. In 16th place, I have West Ham, and I probably would add them lower had Graham Potter still been in there. Just kind of trust Nuno to go in there and keep this team up. I just think that him as a manager, it's a little bit like a get-out-of-jail-free card, and I think West Ham will pick up as the season goes on. Interested to see how they do at home. They've had a really bad start when it comes to home games this season. So that could be interesting if that continues. But I do think that West Ham will have more than enough. They've got a decent team, and now they've got a manager who knows how to set up his team to pick up points. So I think West Ham will just about be there. I think they'll be in and around it. I don't think they're going to have a fantastic run where they'll finish with 50 points, but I think they'll be to have just enough. In 17th place, I have Leeds United, and kind of humming hard with this one. I've been pretty okay on Leeds. I think Leeds have shown enough to me all season to suggest that they're a little bit like Sunderland, where I look at them and I just don't see a team that's going to get relegated. Even at the weekend against Tottenham, they were pretty solid in the game and undone by a couple of deflections, but there was nothing really in the game. And the Bournemouth game last weekend, yes, they've chucked away late points, but again, they played well against a Bournemouth team that I'm pretty high on. I have Bournemouth in 7th. Bournemouth are a very good team, and they'll pick up points against a lot of teams away from home. And I just look at this Leeds team and I just think the physicality they've got, the defensive strength they seem to have, they'll pick up points in the Premier League, and I'm pretty confident that Leeds will just about stay up. And look, this is 17th. I'm not predicting them to finish 9th. I still think they're going to be in trouble, and I think they'll be looking to the end of the season. Leeds are going to be in the scrap, as I think probably West Ham, Sunderland and Brentford will be in and around that scrap for most of the season. But I think Leeds are going to be looking over their shoulder a lot of the season, maybe even falling into the relegation zone at some point. But I just think they've probably got enough to just stay up this season. And that means that I'm predicting 2 newly promoted teams to stay up, which would be significant for the football pyramid because we've needed that. The bottom 3 now, I have Nottingham Forest in 18th, and I did not expect this. I mean, I had Forest in 10th to start the season, and now I'm predicting them to finish 18th. And yes, Ange Postecoglou coming in is a factor in this. I think that the chaos off the field at Nottingham Forest seems to be coming onto the field. How long do they stick with Ange? I don't know. I mean, they could sack Ange as I'm recording this video. It wouldn't surprise you, but they could also stick with him and think that he's the man. But I just don't see this Nottingham Forest team right now. Even though I love their squad and they've got loads of quality players, I just think there's so much chaos going on there. And often for teams to get relegated, it needs to come from chaos on and off the field. And I think Nottingham Forest are that right now. Yesterday, I thought they were really poor against Newcastle. Didn't think they played well. Thought they were really poor midweek in the Europa League. Thought they were really, not great against Sunderland last weekend at home. And I'm just seeing worrying trends, and they've got difficult fixtures coming up. And I think that this could snowball for them. And I think it would be a shame, the hard work that club has done to get themselves in this position, to be undone by a falling out off the field. It's criminal in a lot of ways. It is absolutely criminal if Forest are going to be drawn in there. But I look at the stability that's there, the teams above them, and I just think that'll pay off as the season goes on. Because even if Nottingham Forest made a change in that managerial department, who would they bring in? Would they go back to that Nuno style of play? But they were trying to get away from that. So I have Nottingham Forest finishing in 18th. In 19th, I have Wolves. And I thought that yesterday against Brighton, that was a significant drop of 2 points towards the end. Thought if they won that game and they were then on 4 points, and they had a decent end to the, this period before the international break, I thought maybe they could have had a chance, but I just thought that was significant. And the 9 points behind Sunderland in the Premier League, which if we're looking at this relegation scrap and I have Sunderland in around it, that's a large points total to make up. I think for Wolves, they've got to play Burnley, so Sunderland and then Burnley in the next 2. They have to pick up 6 points there if they're going to have any chance of staying up this season. But I don't believe that they necessarily will. I think they'll struggle away at Sunderland, and I think Burnley have the tools to frustrate them. So that's going to be interesting. I think Wolves though probably are going to go down. And in last place, I've got Burnley. And look, I hate to hate on Burnley. I'm not even hating on Burnley. I think Burnley are going to be decent this season. I thought that when I've watched them, I just think they look a little bit similar to the previous 6 teams we've seen get promoted to the Premier League. I'm like massively convinced that they've got enough in attack or defence to stay up this season. That being said, you know, this 1 to 20 doesn't necessarily show what I think of the league in terms of its strength, because I think Burnley will probably finish at around the 30-point mark this season, which is higher than any of the recently relegated teams in the last couple of seasons. So I think Burnley will probably finish 30. I think Wolves and Forest will probably be in the mid 30, 35, 36, 37. I think it'll probably take about 38 points to stay up this season, which means at the top end of the league, there'll probably be less points to win it. But yeah, I think that we're probably looking at 38 to survive this season, which means that you're looking at the teams I've got staying up. If you look at Leeds, that means they've got to pick up 30 points from now at the end of the season. So that's less than a point per game. For Sunderland, that means they've got to pick up, 27 points from now at the end of the season. So it's obviously far less than a point per game to stay up if it is around 38 points. So they've had good starts, good foundations to build on for the rest of the season. But let me know what you think. What are your 1 to 20s? I'd be very intrigued to see where everyone has, this relegation zone, because I think it's very interesting to see how everyone's doing this season at the bottom. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and we'll catch you for another video very soon.